Hey, I want to welcome everybody this morning. Looks like we got a really good group today. Got a really exciting session that I'm looking forward to today. Each time it seems like we're getting better and better. And before we even start that, I'd like to reach out if there's ever a time that you feel like you'd like to present any kind of material. If you'll go ahead and send an email to your regional directors, and we'll be happy to get you on at some point. Today we're going to we bring on Jimmy Krueger, and I'm kind of excited about this one. He's going to talk about an actual soccer training and building into it by covering functional groups within a system of play. I know he's put a lot of hard work into this thing, and I was excited about his lead up and talking to him about it. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to you and get after it.
Yeah. Let me share my screen real quick. Y'all have that?
Yep, it says, there we go.
Okay.
Good to go.
So obviously today's topic is training functional groups, and just kind of how it's going to roll is we're going to go over the quick overview of the entire presentation, which involves actually defining the functional training and functional groups and the difference between those two, applying it to a system of play, brief talk about practice plans, both preseason and season. And as high school coaches, we all know that a week looks different, you know, first semester versus second semester. I'm going to give an example of a lesson plan that I actually use, and I continue to use. It's based off of the US soccer model, and a lot of my influences are based off of the soccer model because most of my coaching education has come from them. And then I've gone and done 3 different sessions dealing with the 2-7, 3-11, which are your outside backs, outside wingers, and their movement as it relates to one another, movement with the 10-8 and 6, and then movement with the 9 and 10 and their length of play. And then finally, we'll conclude this presentation with talking about reflections in your training sessions and how important they are. So functional training, everyone does this, even if they don't know they're doing it. It's basically the concept of training players for the actual functions within the position that they're playing on the field. For example, your 9s, if you're doing any kind of finishing work with them, what types of finishing they're having, whether it be their back to goal, a one-touch turn and hitting the ball. All those are technical functional training. Tactical components would be cues of the game, or things like when your outside players cut in, knowing the appropriate times to cut in. All those are things that we do. I mean, it's done for kids very, very young, but this whole concept is about moving it forward into larger numbers. So functional groups are 2 or more positions that actually work off of each other. This could be something just as simple as their movement with one another, or it could be something a little bit more complicated with their roles and responsibilities that are shared or dependent on one another. Some positions can actually be part of multiple functional groups. It's not just you're in one. So functional groups obviously can be applied to any system of play. For the past decade, my program has run a 4-2-3-1 or 4-3-3 variance on all 3 levels. And it's something that has contributed to our success over those years. It's something that we'll stick with until, obviously, if it doesn't work, we'll change it. But when talking about a system of play, as high school coaches, the key is to find what's working best for you and your program. What works for me as a system of play and how I have my players play might not be what's going to work for you, but that's your big goal and big role, is to be able to identify and make it work for you. The uniqueness about what we do is we're dealt a specific hand with the kids we get year in and year out. We're not in control of the players that we have. It's up to us to do the most with those players. That's where effective coaching can really make the difference. Roles and responsibilities should be defined for each player, and they should all have an understanding of how their specific position works within the system of play. It's not just to go out there and get something done. Giving them the idea and the tool set to be successful on the field will do well for you. For the purpose of this presentation and this discussion, I'm going to be using the 4-3-3, and I'll talk a little bit about how it can be applied to other systems of play as well, but that's not the biggest emphasis here. It's just simply talking about positions and how they relate to each other. So here's just a generic movement out of the 4-3-3. You can put this on a locker room and players will look at it and really not get a lot out of it because it's just directional movement. You can get even further along by making arrows longer with the emphasis. If you want your 7 to drop off a little bit more, bigger arrow in that direction, whatever it may be. But we use the number system in our program, and we have for quite some time, and it works. It really does. The kids identify it. They feel like they're operating at a higher level of intelligence when they're using a number versus a position for whatever reason. So our young players will come in and they'll learn this number system, which is once again based off the US model, and they'll start to learn roles and responsibilities of each one of these in this system of play. The idea is that as they progress from team to team, their knowledge will continue. And by the time they get to me, the most important thing in the attack is the creativity component. And they're allowed to have a little bit more freedom of it because they understand how the system actually works. And like I said, it's been extremely beneficial. There'll be some things that I'll have to take a varsity level player and apply to and change things based off of just the demand, but that core foundation, they have a general understanding of how things work. And then, you know, the craziness of our environment where injuries come into play and things like that, to where you might have a guy that for the first 2 levels have played center mid, but you're going to need him at center back on the varsity level. So that whole understanding of every single position on the field is significant. This past year, our 2 starting center backs never played center back for the program. We had to develop them, and they actually came on and did a fantastic job for us just because they had an understanding of their general movement, and then everything else will come after that. So breaking it into actual functional groups, the 3 examples I'll be using today in the training session, of course, are the 3, 11, 2, 7, which are your outside players, your 6, 8, and 10, and then your 9 and 10. When I said that you can be part of multiple functional groups, for example, obviously the 4 and 5 will be a functional group with one another. You can lump the 6 in there as well, especially if you like the 6 to drop and join the back line if both outside backs are advanced in the attack. All those movements and the things, the cues that happen because of a certain reason, they can be lumped into the functional training group. So what we're going to start talking about is the practice plan leading up to the training session, and how and what I do for preseason versus the season. So depending on the time of the year, the practice plan obviously looks different. The main point is to actually have a plan and to execute that plan. The biggest thing you can do as a coach is to come in super organized. I get made fun of quite a bit because I always get up to the field an hour to hour and a half before and have everything set up. I think I'm a lunatic. But the presentation in itself is the first step to winning the kids over, in my mind. And if they go in there saying that this guy's highly organized, he knows exactly what he's doing, you've already won him over. During preseason, you might put priority on fitness or strength over tactics, and that's completely fine. Again, it's your program, and you know what is your weakness, and you know what you need to work on. This season, you might have sessions dealing with preparation for a specific opponent, what makes them successful. You might have tactical areas in which you want to improve, or just, we all know the general maintenance and recovery that's needed throughout the season with 2 games a week. And especially if you're in a district that's super competitive, those games, you know, it takes some time to recover from. So I've developed I've evolved as a coach, as everyone should, over the years, and what you believe in your philosophy. And that's the beauty of it. You're always the student of the game, student of the craft, and you're going to continually fine tune what you think is right. I used to hit fitness hard in August. Many years ago, I decided that I don't need them fit in November. I want them fit in January and be able to function in April. So I kind of changed my preseason philosophy a bit. So this is a general overview of a weekly schedule for us, where we have it split, and it looks pretty similar to this. Now, there's things in the school year that will change a weekly schedule a little bit. For example, a holiday or whatever it may be, or early dismissal. But this is how it looks to its core. Where Monday we have technical training, typically core work. Tuesdays and Thursdays we're in the weight room. Wednesdays we're training the small-sided to expanded small-sided, which is phase 3 and phase 4 of a topic. You'll see this in a little bit. And then Friday we're training with the game in mind. So this obviously is going to get thrown out because of the new rules and what's going to be allowed for the next fall, where we can do strength and conditioning components outside of the class. So I'm probably going to move more towards on the ball 5 days a week, and after school we'll handle the things that we need to handle and have that set. So as we approach preseason 2, which is getting closer to the season, everything's basically the same, mid-October to Thanksgiving, but the thing that switches for us is those weight days become fitness days. We still hit strength, but it's more core, it's more body. The idea is that we're trying to lean up the player a little bit before the season with emphasis on first step, explosion, and maintenance. So we build this idea postseason into summer, into preseason 1, where we want them to build strength. We want them to put a little bit of weight on their frame, and then we'll lean them up as the season approaches. And with this little tweak in schedule, it means that the preseason is not as long. It's a new thing. It's fresh again. And you all know in August when kids report in for the first time, they are energetic. And then you'll hit sometime in the middle of the semester where it gets to be routine. So switching it up a little bit will help with this. So topics, when we talk about preseason, it's obviously not going to be one topic a day. There's not enough time on just doing it during the class period. So what we do is we do one topic per week. If we feel as though our players are where they should be within that topic, we'll move on to a different topic. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll do an attacking topic in a week and then flip it to do the exact opposite the next week. An example of that would be building out of the back being a topic. We work on our Wednesday and Friday on building out of the back. The following week we'll do defending with 3 forwards. What I've also done, because I'm in a good spot where I have an assistant coach in each athletic period, how we operate our varsity athletics is I have 2 groups, mainly from the get-go. And all the kids know that one group is basically what is going to look like varsity. There might be a movement or 2 between the groups, but it's pretty clear what I'm doing. And that second group is going to be a JV1 group, once again with the goal in mind that they're going to try to compete to move up to the higher level group. But what we've done is I've taken a topic and I've given them a conflicting topic. And on Friday we play each other and we're each coaching the topic, whether it be me switching the point of attack and him working on defending from the flanks, however it may be. And once again, that's kind of stolen from the U.S. coaching education system, to where you go into these clinics and you have a topic and a group on the other side of the field has another topic. And the big part of your evaluation is when you come together in phase 4 and you play each other and you're trying to make coaching points and hitting things based off of that said topic. Obviously, when we roll the season, we do one topic per training session, unless there's something that I don't feel right about, something that's not clicking, we'll address it the next day. I'm not a big fan of just dismissing and moving on. It's like you're trying to hit checks in the box to make it feel like you're doing your job. I want them to have a true understanding of the topic, because there's a reason why we're doing it. There's a reason why I feel like we need to improve upon a certain area. So I want to make sure that they're on page. If not, we'll have the same practice again. And we'll keep doing it until they finally get the picture that, okay. And you'll be surprised, because players want change as much as anything. They don't want to do the same thing over and over. So here's the example of the lesson plan I actually use. Now I do 2 things with this. I either handwrite on this, or I have a iPad with a digital pen, and that iPad, I can do the same thing, and I can pretty it up with all the different color ink and everything, digital ink, if that's what you want to call it. But I use this, and what I do with this is I will always create a digital copy of it, and I use OneNote. OneNote is a way for me to archive every single one of these. So I can go back from 6 years, 7, 10 years ago and see what training I did at what specific time, how did it look, what can I tweak with it. And I think it's very important for you to keep track and hold on everything you've done, just so you can build off of it. I also share this with my assistant coaches. I give them access to OneNote so they can see actually what I'm doing, and if they want to apply it, they can. Oftentimes we'll try to get them to create content, which is great. but I'm all about sharing as much and helping them as much as possible. And then if we're in the office and they want me to explain something, it's all about that. You know, it's just a good way for you to continually build off of training sessions and not just settle with what you've done in the past. And when I get into the reflection part, I'll talk a little bit more about it, but this is a typical thing. Formations on the side, basically, whenever we get to the game or even the expanded small side and I'm working with the topic and specific group of kids, I'll have it off to the side. I'll have little adjustments off to the side. So it's all there and thought out beforehand. With that in mind, I make it a demand for my kids. If they know they're not going to be at school, they better let me know, because my whole training session is built around personnel. And if they're not there, it falls apart and I'm not happy about it. So they know the day before to give me a email the day of, if it's something random, to text me or get on Sports U, whatever you got to do, and let me know, because they know that I'm not happy if there's a disruption to the plan. Anyway, so what I typically have moved to is phase one, which is a technical warm-up. We always do a rondo. There's so many rondos out there that you can look up, and it's just engaging. Big roles, keep the energy level up, make it fun, make it competitive, get them moving, get them having quality touches, not just touches, but actual quality touches that have a significance to them. As we move on to phase two, which is typically a small sided, oftentimes this is not to goal, it's not to given direction, it's just the beginning phases of a topic. Phase three will be the expanded small sided, and that's just larger number, typically to a goal, and of course game in mind. So how we do this for preseason is we'll do phases 2 and 3 on Wednesday, phase 4 on Friday. So typically the technical component is done Monday. We do Krueger instead of rondo. So that's how we do it in preseason. With season, this is all one day, obviously. So that's just the two differences between it, but the same documents filled out. So back to the functional groups. So the first thing that we're going to be talking about is the 311 and the 27. And I've done phase 2, 3, and 4 for the next 3 lessons. So I have philosophies built off of the 311, 27, and sharing the line. Now your philosophies might be completely different than mine, and that's great. That's perfectly acceptable and fine. There's a reason why I think the way I do, and the reason why I train my kids to move the way we do. So, you know, it's the beauty of the game. It might work for you, might not work for me. When training the 3s and 11s and they're moving off the ball, we have central focus on them not giving a direct vertical line with each other. I'm not a fan of a vertical pass from the 3 to 11, from the 2 to 7. Typically what happens in a high school game is it takes 3-4 passes to move a ball from one side to the other. And by the time the ball's on that side, the other team has shifted, and it's heavy numbers on the flank. Not a lot of room to operate, not a lot of space to build out. So that vertical ball from the 3 to 11 or 2 to 7 is typically a ball where that guy has his back to a defender. And more often than not, it's tight with zero space, so the touch will go out of bounds, you'll get dispossessed. There's just not a lot of room for success. Now, don't get me wrong, if that's a big switch, the other team in their space, that ball's perfectly fine. I don't care. But I'd much rather them move to where they're supporting each other at an angle to give us a greater chance of building out of that side without the need of just a massive switch every time to advance a ball. The concept basically goes like this. If the 3 has the width, the 11 will pinch in. If 11 has the width, 3 pinches in. And typically in our game, the 3 and 2 are the ones that control that, because they're the ones that build out more than the others, unless it's winning the ball in the final half, or whatever it may be. So their touches will control the 7 and 11's movement, in my mind, and the session's built around that. I'm not a true fan, obviously, as I said, of the vertical passes, and I went on a slide ahead on my little thing, but this is basically my philosophy on the reasons why. When dealing with a specific group, there's some kind of tips that you learn along the way that help you as a coach in having a visual of what's going on the field. And one of the best things that you can do when you're functionally training groups is to put them in a different color penny like you would a joker or a neutral player, because your eye will catch that. Your eye will see the difference there. So in a training session for a 3-11-2-7, they'll be the ones in a different color. Same thing with my 3 center midfielders. Just a tip I learned along the way that it makes it really easy to identify where they're at on the field at all times. Also, when we're dealing with movement, we like to put zones down using baby cones or the flats. And as we progress to the game, we remove those and see if they can have the same ideas without the visual grids that are put down. We remove those zones, obviously, because once we get to the game, typically there's no restrictions, there's no things in place outside of the normal laws of games. We try to get it as close to the game environment as possible, and then we go from there. So here's an example of me actually filling out a practice from December 10th of 2019. I like to date them too, just to see how much I didn't know way back then and how much more I know now. But typically, like I said, there's an app called Cam Scanner that I use to digitally scan all my documents, and then I can email them to myself and then upload them into OneNote and go from there. But this exact session is the one I'm about to go over from phase 2 to 3 to 4. And it'll be done a little bit bigger so you can actually see. I know it's hard to read my handwriting, and that's why I do what you're about to see. But this will be the improving the 2-7-3-11 movement session. So phase 2. This is basically a very restricted training where the 2 and 3 indicated. Y'all can see my mouse, yes? Can you see it? Perfect. All right, so your 3 and your 2 are initiating everything here. The 3 will either open up wide or open up centrally. At that time, the person in the gray, which can be a coach, can be a central midfielder, can be anyone. If you're comfortable hitting a ball 7 yards at a diagonal, do it. Kids will love to see it. It will chain react the advanced player. So if the 3 checks in, the 11 opens up wide, ball gets played to the cone, they'll take a touch forward or touch central, depends on their comfort level, and then they'll play the ball wide. The idea obviously is for his shape to be chest, hips open up to the ball, and then that pass to be to his first foot, allowing him to take a touch and then serve the ball. Real simple. Just one movement, play a ball, touch, serve. Now the central player on the 9, all he's there is to spin off and finish, have a target, so he gets a little reps in. That significance aren't on these players though. It's just typically these. Now I might have 2 3s queued up, might have a couple flanking players queued up, might have this going on another side, whatever it may be, but very, very basic movement. On this side, obviously it's the opposite. The 2's opening up wide, which will put the 7 in. And we just have a little combination play that builds off of it. So the 2 goes wide, takes the touch, plays the ball inside to the 7. The 7 will link with the 10 to the 9, and then turn, receive, and hit. Same concept, just a little quick combination play. The emphasis obviously will be also on his body shape the entire time. Is he playing the drill? You're going to hear me say that quite a bit throughout this. You'll have players that know the motions you want them to take, and they take non-soccer moves in those motions. They'll just go straight line. There'll be no energy to their legs. They'll just be following and getting into this simple routine. And I try to break that, but real simple. 2 different types of movements. Everyone's going to be on the same page with it. Give them a chance to finish. You can layer this as well. If you want your 10 to get a little extra work, when they play off of the 9, what would you want your 10 to do in a game? Crash the backside, follow up on rebounds. However you want to do it, you can put that in place as well. They'll alternate sides and keep the ball going. As soon as the ball is hit or released, the next ball goes into play. So phase 3 is basically going to goal, opens up. Obviously, the numbers get a little bigger. So how this is structured, I have grids off to the side, and the only rule in place with the grid is only one player can occupy that on the attack. Now, keep in mind, I'm working with the oranges. Our topic is dealing straight with the 3-11 and the 2-7. I'm not overly concerned with the whites, but I want to give them a goal. I want to give them some kind of reward for working, right? So what I'll typically do is I'll put small goals or one large goal. When they win it, hit the goal as quick as possible. I'm not interested in them trying to possess right now. I'm not interested in them trying to look fancy. I'm trying to get as many reps for these guys as possible. So if the ball goes out of bounds, ball will get reset here. But if the whites do win it, we'll let it go unless it goes on for too long. I don't want 3 or 4 minutes of the oranges chasing, because that's not the topic I'm trying to use right now, not the topic I'm trying to bring out. So your typical, you can put a player here, 4, 5, or 6. You can have a couple players here. They're playing a ball out to the 2 or 3. When the ball gets played out to the 2, it will release the defender. So they're going to have 2 defenders here just simply waiting. As soon as they get their first touch on it, immediate chase. It'll put a little game-like pressure on your 2s and 3s. Oftentimes, when you don't have these players, it becomes very, very slow and methodical. I would much rather put a little pressure on them to actually perform like it's a game. So once the ball gets played out there, if the 2 opens up wide, 7 obviously comes in. It's live play from there, freedom of play. Obviously, the 2 is going to be pushed to advance the ball and not go back. Same thing on the other side. Ball gets played out to the 3. He comes in. 11 opens up. You can also try to talk about their movement, your 8, 9, and 10's movement when this happens as well. That's layering it a step further. You can purely focus on these 2 guys and what they want to do when the ball's played out wide. It's whatever level you're working with, wherever your guys are at with this given topic, you can kind of get even more involved with it or leave it as bare as this. Completely up to you. And then as we approach the game, and if there's questions popping up right now, I'll go back and I can readdress everything right now. But as we approach the game, my big philosophy and concept is to keep the laws in place. I don't have restrictions. I'm not forcing them wide. I'm not saying that a goalkeeper gets it. He has to get the ball wide. You have to get the ball wide before you go to goal. When we're in phase 4, it's the laws. But what I can do as a coach is create systems of play that will bring my topic out. A 3-2-3 is my oranges, the guys I'm working with. Going up against a 4-2-2, obviously you can see the space is wide. What's going to happen now is play is going to go wide. It's just naturally going to happen without me having to say anything. I always will try to mirror to the system based off of what we have and what my system is in the game, 4-3-3 or 4-2-3-1, however you want to say it. But once again, you'll create so many coachable moments based off of just having a little bit of thought going into your system of play. And typically what I do when we get to the game, when the kids, they're having a quick drink of water, when they come back, I have the pennies laid out on the ground in the system of play that they're about to go into so they can all have a visual of it. I find that works out pretty well, especially when you're dealing with young kids, for them to have a visual of how the system works instead of you just saying 3-2-3. What does that mean? Showing them. So moving on to the 6, 8, and 10. There are a lot of different philosophies on the 6, 8, and 10. And I've had to have a different philosophy depending on the personnel I have at that given time. Coaches have a number of different philosophies, obviously, with them moving off the ball. Is your 6 told to sit in front of the 5 and 4 with no exceptions? That's your role. That's your goal. That's the only thing I care about. Do you allow your 6 to advance? Do you have your 8 fill when your 6 advances? Do you not care? Do you want all 3 central midfielders to go forward and you're not really concerned with the space opening up in front of your center backs? These are all good questions. What I've had to do in the past is I've had to have at one point in time, I've had 6 that could sit deep by himself because we had 2 good center backs behind him as well, and it didn't matter. I've had a 6 that was just exceptional and could get the job all done all by himself. Now my 8 could just play like a second 10. I've also had 2 brand new center backs and a new 6 where we had to make sure we secured that area before anything else. If your team is winning the possession game, you can get away with having the 6 by himself because you're controlling the flow. All these are things that you can answer, and your movement and your training sessions are built off of the personnel you have. It's just the emphasis, of course, is to actually show them how you want them to move instead of just expecting them. Instead of you go, you stay, show them what that means. So here's phase 2. Phase two, it's a form of rondo, and I really like this drill because it gets the two guys in the middle having to work and having to constantly find new space, which is a big part of what we do. So this is, and I'll kind of show you what to do if your numbers aren't as proper as this, where it's perfect. The grid size itself could be completely catered towards the level you're dealing with. Typically, at my varsity level, we're dealing with a 20 by 20 grid. If it's an exceptional group, I'll shrink it. But that's kind of the sweet spot right now. So how this works, the grays are all jokers. They're playing just with the attacking players. The players on the outside are operating from cone to cone. They cannot enter the grid. They're just staying outside. I'll tell you, emphasis will be for the players to stay near the line, because what you'll see is you'll have players that just want to maximize the space and pull 6 yards away just to make the drill easier for them. But you want them to stay in between the cones as tight as possible to make the drill come to life. So what's going to happen is you can have a pass set limit where 7 passes equals a goal. And if that's too easy, you can increase it. If that's too hard, you can shrink it. But you're basically in a possession 8v4. Now the whites inside are trying to defend. They can go out to get the ball. They're not restricted to the grid. If the whites win the ball, they'll flip with the oranges. So the whites now become the attacking players, the oranges go inside. It makes it competitive. Now, if you have additional players and you don't have the ability to have a second grid set up where you have another coach out there, or you just prefer to have all players in front of your eyes because they try harder, whatever it may be. What I've done in the past is I have had 4 cones over here with the next team queued up. So the second the offense loses the ball, those guys are gone. The defenders come outside, and the new 4 come in to defend. And you can do this with any rotation, any number, any irregular number, it doesn't matter. So what's going to happen is you'll see a lot of times players will try to just play out on the perimeter, and that will always get busted. They're so comfortable playing a square ball and just rolling it. What's going to happen with 4 defenders is they're going to start completely compressing that space, and you're not going to be able to play out. When they become successful is when they get the 2 central players involved, where they're playing those little diagonal penetrating passes, and the switch can happen because of it. And then you're just pinging the ball around, and the 4 guys really have nothing to do. Once they get the hang of it, it becomes really beneficial. And it would be simply you working with 2 center midfielders and having them not just moving for the ball, but potentially moving away to create space for the second midfielder. If he's checking at an opposite angle, opening up space for him, he's pulling a defender away. Just little things that you can have as coachable moments for these players. It's not just about maintaining possession outside. You're going to want them to play inside. Once again, it's emphasis on the 2 central midfielders. So what I typically do when I'm dealing with higher numbers, I'll start it off with 2, and then next phase, I'm going to deal with all 3. And then the next phase, it's going to be the game and how all 3 of them can do what we just talked about. So phase 3, it's once again 2 goal. I'm dealing with all 3 center midfielders. So this could be a coach, this could be a center back, however you want to do it. He's playing a ball in. It's a 3v2, and I've done this a number of different ways. I've had a passing limit before they can play out. But what I find out works best is make it realistic. As soon as they can play the 9, 11, and 7, it's live play. The whole field opens up. So the only rule I have in this grid is that one center midfielder cannot occupy the same grid as the other. They have to move off of each other. So if you think about this, in this scenario here, if the ball's played to this would be my 6. Ball's played here, and he turns. This man has one option only, and it's the pull away. It's not to stay. It's the pull away in the opposite grid. When he does that, the defender now has to make a decision, right? Does he go with the guy, or does he worry about the ball? But it becomes a true 2v1. Not only that, but their spacing becomes proper. What starts to happen is this center midfielder will see that he's alone, will see that he has space to turn. He'll yell turn, and in that process, he's opening up a way, basically creating a channel. Now, if he steps, he can play and so forth. But it typically, you just focus on 3 guys movement. What also can happen is your 8 can pull completely away at the beginning, which will open up both of the 4 grids, both of the close grids for the 6, and he'll have more area to work with. But it's just them kind of identifying that they're all linked and they're moving. I don't even care in this grid if the 8 pulls out, the 6 goes across, and the 10 checks in, as long as it's in unison. And it's like I said, now they're worried about 2 additional people and how they're moving, not just them, and sitting in space. So like I said, as soon as they see it, they can play a ball out. The only thing that I tell the guys in the middle is play where you're facing. Always play where you're facing, unless you have space to turn, unless the defender's not on your back. And what I have is, if this is me or center mid, they can use me as a bumper to facilitate possession. So if I play a ball out to the 6 and the defender shoots on him, and he has nothing, he can play the ball right back to me. And then maybe I can split the difference and find the 10 a little deeper, whatever it may be. But it's basically a 4v2 if they use him as a bumper. Obviously, this player's not advancing. If they get the ball out, he's just hanging out. It's simply a 6v5 scenario once they play out. And then finally, the phase 4. Phase 4, obviously, like I said, and it's going to be a theme, the system of play is what's going to dictate the topic in my mind. So this is occasionally when we go into phase 4, I'll create a numbers up situation, especially if it's an attacking topic that requires it. There's no problem with it. What you want to do basically is facilitate success, but not make it too easy to attain it. And once they have high rate of success, make it more challenging, make them have to work harder. So in this, I have a 2-3-3, obviously 3 central midfielders against a 3-2-2. That's a +1 scenario with my oranges, where I have +1 in the middle. Obviously, as players, they're going to try to find that open guy in the middle. And what that's going to force the players in the middle to do is to move into the space, make themselves an option. This should, over time, you should see success from the oranges. And then what I'll do is, once that happens, I'll add the 3rd, and we'll have even numbers everywhere, making these guys have to work a little bit harder to be productive. And it's as simple as that. With a defensive topic, sometimes coaches will go +1 on defense to make sure that we're finding success, because you don't want kids to constantly fail. You want them to have a little glimpse of it, and then, like I said, make it more challenging, make it more difficult for them. Before you know it, they'll be performing at a higher level. Their speed of play will pick up. Everything will go. The final session will be dealing with the 9 and 10. One of the big focuses with this is them not moving in the same direction as the ball. Happens so often, where ball's drifting from the left side to the right side. All players do what? They follow the ball. They follow the path of the ball. And one of the things that I constantly preach is I don't want both my 9 and 10 drifting with the ball. I'd much rather the 9 be the one drifting, because one of my philosophies is that the deeper player is the better player to play a ball to, because the under one, the 10 in this situation, can support the 9. And if he receives it off of the 9, he's receiving it in a much more dangerous position than if he received it from a 6 or a 5 or a 4, because his back's to goal. If he receives it off the 9, he's facing goal. He's able to attack space and cause some problems. So phase 2 is a passing pattern. We do quite a bit of passing patterns, and this is one that's very, very common with us. It's funny to see my varsity guys do this passing pattern, and I'm going to explain it. Oh, there's a lot of arrows, so I'll explain it, and I'll talk a little bit about coaching points that happen every time. I've done this quite often, from my freshmen all the way up to varsity. And when the freshmen do this, there's the same things that happen every single time. And when we correct it, it starts to get lively. And I have a varsity do it, and it's just a completely different element altogether. How this passing pattern works is what we'll talk about first. So this is your 9 in the situation, your 10. You can also do this with 2 central midfielders as well, if that's your topic. It works with anyone that's playing underneath another player. You know, It could be your 6-8, could be your 10-9, could be your 10-8, however you want to do it. Just players that are used to it. So the ball comes into play to your, in this situation, your 10. Your 10 is going to check in the direction in which he's receiving it, right? And then what I have the opposite player do is go the opposite way. So typically, and I show him this, I have to demo this. If I'm a guy on his back and this man checks completely over here, and this guy opens up this space, he might be able to find the deeper option in the game. And that's all I'm trying to get him to look at. Not just move to the drill, but move to the game of soccer. So the ball goes out to the 10. The 10 swings the ball. This ball now goes deep to the 9. The 9 links with the 10. The 10 switches the ball to the other side. This ball gets spilled out, and then a big switch happens. And then it's the same thing on the other side. Ball gets played shallow, ball goes out, ball goes deep, ball goes to the supporting central midfielder, ball gets swung, touch out, switch. So here's the things that start to happen. And if you have questions on this too, I'll address it after we're done. We're almost done with the actual presentation part of this. What happens always? So I'm sit there with my freshman. I'll let it go for 30 seconds, maybe longer, and I already know it's going to happen. So this guy right here knows his goal, his role is to play a ball and then go for it. So what happens? He plays the ball, instantly starts running for it. Not a fan of it. He's playing to the drill. So at the point in time where he's receiving it from this man, he's 4 yards away from him. Not something I don't like. So what I preach is this. When you play that initial ball in, act like you're going to receive it again. Act like you're going to be part of this possession. Act like you're a soccer player, not just playing to a drill. So when they play the ball to him, I have them actually physically move 2 steps back. Active feet, have their hips open to the ball. Act like they're about to receive it. Ball gets played out wide. Open up a little bit for a switch. Act like you're going to receive it. Wait. Ball gets played deep. Show to him. Act like you're there. Like act like you want to have the ball. And then as soon as it gets released there, you're opening up wide, not in a straight line. These players are always going to want to run in a straight line to their next destination. Open up wide to create an angled support and then hit the switch. That is always the first thing I fix. The next thing, and that's just a minor thing. That's not really what I care about right now, but it just creates a little bit of sense of pride with these players outside. And then the second thing is for these players, they're not going to release until they play the deeper person, because they'll keep your lines structured. If not, the lines will go weird. So when they play the deep option, they'll follow their pass. When they're playing or receiving from the short option, they're not moving. So the next thing is their movement, the 10's movement. This is what will typically happen. He'll receive it, he'll play to the other side, he'll instantly turn in a straight line, whatever it may be, try to support the 9. I want him to be active. So the ball gets switched. I want him to open up, have his hips, chest, everything to the ball open up, and then receive it at an angle, because the 9's opening up. You want them to stretch as much as possible. You don't want a situation where one defender can be there to put immediate pressure on that initial pass. So them to be active in the middle is the biggest stressor, and just proper passing is the final thing. But these guys will start talking. You want them to talk to each other, and it just increases the productivity of the drill. One of the final things is the actual accuracy of the passing that we address. As a player that knows the exact pattern that's about to happen, you would think that they would know which foot to play the ball to. In this situation, when you're wanting to swing it, but so many times they'll play it to the right foot. Coach against that. Give it to the left foot. Left foot's an easy swing. They're able to keep their body in between the ball and the defender when the defender's in play. So hit the inside foot so he can swing out. Hit the inside foot because he's going to swing it. Instead of just kicking a ball to kick a ball, have a bit of pride in putting it to the right foot. Same thing out here. You know, when you're playing the ball, you can put either foot in, but when you're going to hit it, put it to their outside foot so you can hit a good switch. Don't lead them the wrong way, whatever it may be. But there's a ton of different coaching points that can come out that can, you can affect in a small area. And typically with this, I keep these numbers like this, and I'll have the second grade off to the side. You want high reps, and then you can switch these players out as you see fit. So phase 3, this is one of my favorite drills. I do this for a couple of different topics. I can even do this to pugs, small-sided goals versus big goals. Once players get this and this drill comes to life, they really enjoy it. So how this works, this is me. I'm in the blue. I'm there to just facilitate, keep ball in play. Ball goes out, get another ball in play. Not a big fan of chasing balls, so we always have a lot in the area, and if it goes out, we get another one in as quick as possible. Eliminate the dead time in training, if you will. So how this works, the oranges and the whites are a 1v1 in a grid. And this is, the last time I did this was a 10 by 12, 12 being the width, obviously. But it's a 1v1 in each grid. These players aren't allowed to leave their grid. The jokers, the neutral players that are all-time attack, can go from grid to grid. They're there to help create a build-up. These are your 2 center midfielders, your studs, whoever it may be. The whole goal is to play the targets. Now, they can play either target. The oranges aren't attacking just one goal. They can attack both goals. This creates the unknown element that helps get the topic out as well. So what happens is, in this run of play, at any time, if they play the target, an additional player will be released, and it will become a 2v1. So if I were to show you this, if this orange turned and played this blue, this orange will release into the attack. The opposite grid, not the guy that played the ball, but the opposite. So the idea is for them to read the first pass and then move off and support the 9. You can layer this as many different ways as you can too. We do a number of things where if it's a deep ball, so let's say that the same ball gets played to this 9. Same thing, opposite grid, but the near side grid is the one that comes off and supports. So this means, and I'll tell you this is going to happen, you're going to have forwards that in this drill will try to be lazy at the beginning. They'll check and they'll stay. So the 9 will check, he'll stay. He'll check, he'll stay. And before you know it, he's on top of the grid. There's zero space to occupy, zero space to try to link with the guy that's going to come in and attack. So you're going to constantly be telling them, give us as much length on the field as possible. I don't care. Go stand by the keeper and wait. Stand by the keeper and wait, and then identify when you should be checking. So you're working on the 9, realizing in the run of play when and where to move, how to check at an angle, how to become visible to the ball. And then obviously intelligence in his movement. Where he's positioned right now in this diagram is perfect to receive a ball off of here, because where's the space in front of the goal? Easily underneath run, easy finish on goal. What happens here, there's so many like proper sequence of passing and some really good buildup that happens and some really good goals, basically because they all know they have to do this. They have to be able to read 2 passes, maybe 3 passes ahead to be able to have that early movement. And eventually we'll open this up. Instead of it being a 2v1, if a ball's played near and then swung out, both the defender and the attacker are released. So it's a 2v2. So really there's the emphasis on the early movement from the second attacker to create a goal scoring opportunity before it becomes even numbers. And then finally, the final progression I've done with this, if it's a deep option, both underneath options go to support the 9. So it unlocks the entire. So at any point in time, they can play it small or they can play it big. And once again, the whites are doing the same thing. They're trying to find the targets. Your grays are your center backs. Obviously, they're just there to try to deny the 9, put a little pressure on them. I've done this obviously with pugs as well, like I said, where there's 2 goals, they're split. So basically what happens is the 9 will occupy 1 goal with the idea to try to set the incoming supporting attacker on the second goal. So they start to get really creative and knowledgeable in how they're supposed to be moving. I said, really like this drill. You can expand the grid if they're not finding success, because the whole idea isn't creating 25 passes here. It's, putting some passes together, but being able to find the 9, and then your movement off of it. And then finally in the game, this is the one time that we've had the same system of play back to back. Oftentimes when we're in a 6-a-side game, it's a 2-3-1 from us, because that's the front half of our system of play. Unless it's the offense versus defense, and I'm working on the back line. But with this topic, the only thing I do is I'll narrow the width, because I want it to be more vertical play than play out wide, right? I want my 9 to try to get involved as much as possible. I want my 10 to have to try to move off the 9, and everything else is just in essence part of the game. So that's basically those 3 sessions. Now, when I was talking about my overview, I talked about reflection, the significance of it. This is one of the most important things that I think I've done as a coach over the years. I said that I keep all my training sessions. I hold on to them. And what I do after each training session is I have a reflection. I go back and I grade myself on my training session. And I'm a harsh critic on myself. I'm the only one seeing it. So, be truthful. And I'll go through each phase and identify what I thought went wrong, what I thought went right, what I could change. How can I make it more competitive? Maybe I'll scrub the whole training session because it just wasn't well received. Maybe it was the most fantastic thing I've ever done. I'll make sure that I'll save that for years to come, or do it again. If we had a particular week leading up to a game and we played fantastic for that game, I'll go back and look at the training sessions and see what came out, what works, what stuck in the game, and identify it. So the reflections in itself, it's so important as a coach. Oftentimes you fear failure, but it's yourself that's putting this on you, and with the goal of just continued growth. I tell my players over and over, we all know this, we're all students of the game. We will always be students of the game. This is an ever-changing game. If you're ever in a position where you think you know it all, you're in a losing battle, because the game's going to change. And the kids, even kids that are off on the side, we have the talk where even if you're not on the field actively playing, you better be paying attention, because if I consider myself a student of the game, what does that make you? Everything's able to be learned, everything's able to be absorbed. So don't take that time off just because you're not on the ball. So, I think reflection's super significant. And, for example, I looked back when I was doing this and looked at some of the reflections I've had, and I'm a pretty harsh critic. Even when it goes okay, I always want to try to fix what made it just okay, not great. But that's basically the presentation in itself. And I haven't been active on the looking at the questions, or if any questions were popping up or anything like that. But if there were questions, or if you have questions, feel free to pop them in. If there was a particular drill you want more clarification on, I can give that to you. Even if it's beyond this, if you want it to be one-on-one, you can email me. I can drop my email, whatever it may be.
Hey Jimmy, what's the software you're using for your notes? You said you wrote it on the iPad?
For the notes, like the OneNote?
Yeah, well, you said you put I guess you got a template for your practice sessions, right?
So yeah, it's an iPad. I copied in, and I have OneNote on my iPad, and it has you can draw all features, and you can do that for that, or I just handwrite it with the pen.
That's legit. No, I like that, because I know that's going to be gold, all those plans and stuff. So that was really neat. Hey, if you don't mind, let me jump in right quick, and then just let you know, if you go to the chat session also, you can type in your questions for Jimmy. He's got obviously, he's a very good job and very knowledgeable with it. But also on that chat, you'll see a link. There's actually 2 links. One is to the webinar contact list. So those that have been with us day one, and as we start to add, you'll see there in the list in the Google Sheets. This will allow you to be able to reach out, connect with other coaches that are joining the webinar weekly. The second thing is, each week we also have our panelist resources that they've developed. and you'll see it dating back to day one, but you've also got a link for that as well. So for not only this session, but previous sessions, you'll have access to that. And also we've got our YouTube channel, which will connect some of the videos from the past sessions as well. We started that about 4 or 5 weeks ago. But that being said, does anybody have any questions for Jimmy? I said that was fantastic, Jimmy. I sure appreciate you doing that. That was unbelievably good.
No problem. So there's a question about goalkeeping. So typically, and I've been blessed with situations where I've had a goalkeeping coach. And I was training a semi-professional team here, and what we had was goalkeeping training was off to the side for phase 1, phase 2, and keepers would be introduced for phase 3. With what I do with high school, I do a lot of leadership work with my number 1 keeper. In phase 1, phase 2, sometimes they'll be off to themselves, and that lead keeper will be controlling it, because my other 2 coaches are having teams of their own that they have to manage. In the ideal world, the UIL will give us that assistant head coach that we would all love to have, and you can get that proper goalkeeping beginning part of the training session. But yeah, we'll do things off to the side, and then of course outside of training session, we'll do stuff with them when it's needed. There was a question in the chat for passing pattern. Is it the passing pattern when I was talking about the 9 and the 10? So the 9 and the 10, yeah. So those guys outside, they'll just rotate straight across. After they play the deep option, they'll just go and follow their pass. When they hit the switch, they're going into that next line. That's all their rotation is it's a vertical rotation.
Get another question in the question section there, Jimmy, if you want to read that. I like it.
Do I teach classes? Showing up an hour. Yes, I do. But my schedule is very, very beneficial to me as a soccer coach. I'm in a 7-period day. That's a good question. I'm in a 7-period day. My first 4 classes are my teaching field, which it's a digital art class, so it's low demand on total time. After that, I have a conference, a lunch, and soccer. So I have the time built in the day to have it set. And the reason why I have 6th and 7th back to back is we set up 6th period and 7th period's doing the same thing. They roll right into it. It's just a lot easier as a coach not having to take down and put up within the course of the school day. So I'm fortunate in that, and I built my schedule when I was talking about my athletic periods around the fact that I can have all that done. I get made fun of quite a bit for my teaching field because it's lax. I have a lot of respect for coaches that are teaching a core class and doing it. My general philosophy with substitutions in games is so to ask is JV level or varsity level, because those are 2 different worlds. JV level, what we do, obviously, we have 3 teams. We have typically a 20-man roster on varsity, close to 20-man roster in JV1. And we like to keep the JV2 team smaller because of the shorter halves. It's about 18. And those players, what we do to facilitate or at least keep our numbers healthy, we have a reserve team also that in case injuries happen or things of that nature, this reserve team, which is purely freshmen that might be okay technically, but not there physically yet, could fill in those spots. But we try to get players in on those JV matches because it's all about development. That's why, the system of play I run at varsity, I have the other 2 do the same thing with the idea for development for varsity, not winning in the now for them, but winning later. Occasionally though, and I'll allow my coaches, if something's not working and they want to change it up, they're allowed that freedom. I'm a big believer of empowering your assistant coaches, and once you give them that control, they'll have a little bit more of a buy-in on the program, and they'll care even more about making sure these guys get properly trained and prepared. At the varsity, you know, it depends on the game, to be honest with you. If we're playing a top opponent, you know, substitutions are, you know, significant, but I'm not trying to get everyone in if my 18th, 19th guy will drop the level. And those guys at the beginning of the season, I'll have that conversation with, and they'll be well aware, you know, but hopefully that answered that. Same drills for 6th and 7th, just more depth for varsity. Yes, yeah. My big thing is I want them to be doing the same thing, but they might be doing the same thing at a slower pace. Because honestly, as the progression happens for teams, it's more speed of play and decision making. Everything else it's pretty much the same ideas. So we have them have the same exact training. So fitness runs that I do, I've developed over the years in the fitness test in that world. That's a whole nother presentation in itself on the fitness run that we do. It's just for a quick answer. I'm more catered towards things you would see in a game versus, you know, 35 laps around the track. But what I've done is I've created a competitive training test, which is, you know, basically in a nutshell, you run a mile, then you run an 800, then you run a 400, then you run 2 200s, and it's all timed. Total run distance is 2 miles, and we have a big chart that I used to keep, and we would rank each kid. We would rank if they moved up the next time we ran it. If they finished sub 10 minutes, they would get a shield, where we have these Spartan shields because we're the Spartans, and they can display it on their backpack. It's the same shield we give every man in the match for varsity, and it was good. And I would record their finishes on each one, so it's not a, you know, notebook where the kid's just telling you the time. So I'll go back and put their times in. You know, other things we'll do is anything that goes from sprint to jog to walk. You know, I got one from college where we used to do something called Real Madrids, where it would be a series of sprints that would start from small and go all the way to a full field, and we would cycle through that 3 times, anywhere from 10 to 12 sprints, and you just expand it maybe 8 to 10 yards each sprint. Looks like a cellular device as it goes. But just, you know, like I said, my big thing with the whole fitness is if we're working hard in training session, the on the line stuff is minimal. I'm not a big fan of on the line. I've lived it, especially at the end of a training. I typically have training built into my training session. So if I were hitting it in a day, I would have phase 2, a little fitness, like a little 6-minute quick spurt, water. Phase 3, quick 6-minute spurt of fitness, water, and then phase 4. I feel like that's the best flow to a training session. If I play a 1-3-5-2, please discuss my functional groups with 2 forwards. So obviously the 2 forwards are going to be a functional group in themselves. Your 3 backs would be a functional group. Your 3 center midfielders would be a functional group. Your outside midfielders would be a functional group. Specifically, if you want them to play deep, if you want, let's say that on the right side, your midfielder's advancing the ball, and then you get dispossessed. So you want your left midfielder to drop all the way back to join the back line for a little bit of security on a big switch, on a counterattack, whatever it may be. Those 2 outside mids, if they move, anyone that moves because of someone else's movement can be considered a functional group. Your 3 on the back line, are they center backs? Do they just sit? Is it one central back where that guy drops a little bit and the other 2 are more fullback mentality where they're worrying about the forwards and the width of the field? All those can be considered the functional groups. With me, even so, occasionally we'll go across teams that play a 2 forward system against us. And if you ever played against my team, both my 3 and 2 go forward. We get involved, we overload. And if you're a 2 forward system, obviously I'm addressing my 2 and 3 as a functional group, because if one goes, the other doesn't. I'm not a fan of a 1v1 system or 1v1 situation with my center backs versus your 2 forwards. I'd much rather have my others outside back, drop back, join the line, and then have 2 layers of defense versus 1. Do I cut seniors at the varsity level that you feel will not be having playing time? So that's a conversation I have with players. I have in the past cut seniors that weren't going to play because of the character and personality they have. You know, you can tell certain players that would take it harder, not do well with it, and it would be bad for them, bad for the team. And we have that conversation at the beginning. And then there's players that are just happy to be a part of it. You know, my big philosophy is if you can keep up in training session, you're going to stick around, and they all know that, and that's gives them something to work on, because those players that aren't going to be performing on the field, you want them training, you want them hard in training to make everything better. If they slack and other players see it, it hurts the overall chemistry of your training session. And one of my big environmental things is competitiveness in training. I'm a huge believer in it. If you don't have competitive training sessions, when it comes to the game, you're gonna struggle. If every training session has that competitive component into it, you know, you're gonna be ready to come game.
I think that's about it for the questions, Jimmy. We really appreciate your time. I see Coach Gutierrez has something that he just popped up there. I'm not sure if you want to get to that. After that, we can close things down for the day or for the weekend. Also, just want to let everyone know that Coach Shipman's going to be presenting next week. I know he's working hard on things, and he always does a good job whenever we talk with him. So so if you want, Coach, if you wouldn't mind addressing that last question there, and then we'll wrap things up for the week.
Have I ever changed my system? So outside of getting like a red card and having to change it, no, I've made adjustments, and typically the adjustments are just the roles within that system of play. If we're a 4-3-3 heavy side and we're losing the middle of the field, I have to drop my 7 and 11. I have to. So we shift more into a 4-5-1. You know, there'll be times where we'll have my 3 completely play like an outside midfielder versus an outside back. And it's never having to wholly change everything, say slide into 3-5-2 entirely. It's just within our given system, we'll make small adjustments to help us with success on the field. You know, like I said, so far in the past 10 years, we've been in a position to where the adjustments we've had to make were minor. Now, if things were falling apart completely, yeah, there would be something, but it would be something we would have known about prior, and we would have trained, because I'm not keen on just throwing a 3-5-2 out there. Just, hey, let's try something different. We have to prepare for it, because it won't be even less successful if I make that change on the fly.
Well, thank you, Coach Krueger. We really appreciate your time and effort this week. Everybody, all these slides that Coach Krueger made for us, they should be available up on the Google Doc that Coach Cottle put in there earlier. We look forward to seeing all of you next week. Thank you for your time this weekend. Bye, folks.
If also, I believe if they want to stick around, we'll activate their video. If they want to just chat, they can.
That's fine. Yeah, absolutely. That's fine. So if Andrew wants to shut down the live stream, then we can do that as well, or